So today's class is going to be all about, doing more applied examples and introducing a few more functions as well. So last class, I don't think we talked about Vlookup. Okay, so Vlookup is for vertical lookup. And what this is going to allow us to do is to find some particular value in a vertical fashion and then return something however many columns over that we specify. Okay? So this would be used if you had some sort of a uniquely identifying primary key of sorts. So for instance, let's say that I had a big spreadsheet that had everyone's student ID number. And it also had, I don't know, your grade point average. And let's say I were interested in locating someone's grade point average. Vlookup would be great because what it would allow me to do is to put in your particular student ID, and then it would allow me to go over X amount of columns to what I'm interested in, which would be your grade point average. Does that make sense? Let's see an example. So how do I start? And like I say, bonus points, not going to get any more today. This is where I just begin to expect participation. How do I start off using any function? Equals function name, which is Vlookup. And I can just tab over and go ahead and get to it. So now we have 4 arguments. In fact, I will get bonus points for this. Who can tell me which argument or arguments are not required inside of Vlookup? Range lookup is exactly right. We'll pass it over to him, please. Okay, so lookup value, that's going to be what value it is looking for. Okay, so if you had a student ID, it's going to be the student ID number you're interested in. In this context, let's just choose 9. Okay? Now, the next part is going to be the table array. So for the table array, what you're going to do is you're going to tell it where 9 is. You have to start with that column. You can't start with a different column. So I'm going to use the months as my starting column. If I were to use this blank column as the first column, it would not work. Okay, you have to have the lookup value in the first column. And then for the final column, it's whatever value you're interested in. Okay, or you can go beyond that, but in general, it's going to be starting at the lookup value, and it's going to be ending at what you're interested in returning. Okay, so let's just go ahead and grab columns E, F, and G. Does everyone see what I did there? So once you've gone ahead and typed in Vlookup, put in lookup value, we're using 9, use a comma, and then just grab the E, F, and the G column. So just grab those 3 columns. All right. Now we have the column index number. This is going to be how many columns we're going over to return the value. So it's going to start at 1. We can go 2, 3. Okay? So let's just start with 2. So we're going over 2 columns. Okay? And then the range lookup is going to be where you're either going to get an exact match using false, or you're going to get an approximate match using true. Okay? In this class, always use false. Okay, false is only going to return a result if it's an exact match. So in other words, if 9 is not in this data set and you use false, it will not return a result. It will return an error. If you use true, it will return a result, but it will be the incorrect result. Okay, there are uses of true, but mostly, like I say, in this class, you're always using false, exact matches. Does that make sense? So we're just going to select exact match. Okay. And as you can see, oops, I didn't actually select it. As you can see here, it returns 7. So what this did is this found 9, and this went over 1, 2 columns, and it returned 7. Okay? Does everyone understand that? Anyone lost? Okay. Now, let's see what happens if we do 3 columns. So now we're going to start at the first column. That's column 1. This is column 2. This is column 3. What value should it return? Okay, because we go 1, 2, 3. We look in this cell right here, we have 3, so the answer should be 3. Okay, so we do that. We in fact receive the result of 3. All right, and just for fun, there's not really a big use to this, but if we were so inclined, we could return the result from the first column, which is going to return what? 9. Okay. I will say the one minor use of doing the first column would be to verify that something exists in the data, but there are quicker ways to do that we'll talk about in a couple of, I think Monday's class we'll talk about that. Okay. So let's see what happens inside of Vlookup if we select something using the false modifier at the end here. The range lookup is false. Let's see what happens if we select something that does not exist in the data. So let's select 13. Okay. See how it gives us an error? Now, if we were to go up here and select true, it's going to give us an approximate match. It gives us the closest thing to that, which is 12. Okay, is everyone with me? So that's why we always use false as the modifier at the end of our VLOOKUPs. It's not technically required to use it. We can tell that because it's in brackets, but it is best practice to always have an exact match. All right, questions so far? Yeah. So you're starting, you have the range lookup. It always starts in the first column. You just tell it how many columns do you want it to go over. So if you go over 3 columns, it's going to find 9, and it's going to start 1, 2, 3, and that's what it's going to return, is whatever's in that cell right there. Okay, any other questions? All right. So, like I said, that's basically the gist of the basic functions for now. Basically, the basic functions. That was a bad pun, was it not? Not very fun. So let's go ahead and go over to this other worksheet called grades. Okay. By the way, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, an Excel document is referred to as a workbook. Okay. There are individual worksheets within each workbook. So commands and terms to know is an example of a worksheet. Grades is an example of a worksheet. This entire document up here, Microsoft Excel-Basic Functions, is an example of a workbook. Okay, is that clear to everyone? All right, and I'll just go over briefly how to rename these. You just double-click them, and that'll allow you to rename it. Alternatively, you could right-click and go to rename. So 2 different ways. Like I said, I like to give people multiple ways to do things to find whatever is easiest for them. For example, some people have trouble double-clicking. Okay? If you have trouble double-clicking, how would you want to rename a workbook? Right-click and go to rename. Exactly. Okay? So, what I have here is I have a basic grade calculator. Okay? And let me make this a little bit larger so you can see it just a little better. Okay, so we have labs, 30%, exams, 20%, participation, 10%, and analytical report, 20%. Does this look a little bit familiar? Okay, it should. Okay. So then we have a score. That's going to be your score in that category. That's going to be your weighted score. So for weighted score, all you have to do is take the weight, multiply it by the score, gives you the weighted score. Basic thing there. All right, so if I add up all these weights, what are they going to add to? 1. Okay, that's 100%. Okay, so obviously if I were to convert these to a percentage, move the decimal place 2 over, 30%, 40%, 10%, 20%. Personally, I find decimals a little bit easier to work with than percentages. You know, you can have your own opinion. You could certainly convert all these to percentages. Use the percent button up there if you wanted. But I find decimals a little bit easier to think about and work with. All right. So we have 2 exams and 6 labs. So someone throw me an exam grade. 25%, okay. Another exam grade. 94. All right, someone throw me some lab grades. 55, 83, 70, 76, 2 more. 100. I'm glad someone says 100. 84. Okay, there we go. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete some of these cells here just so we can fit it all on one page. You don't have to do this. Just want it because, you know, I've got mine blown up a little bit so everyone can see, okay? So let's start with participation. All right. What do we want our participation grade to be? Okay, most people get 100. Let's just use 100. All right, analytical report. What do we want that grade to be? 100, okay. Now, we have 2 exams, okay. I want to calculate the average of them. A couple different ways I could do that. I'll show you the first. Okay, I could take, let's use parentheses, open up a parentheses, go ahead and add cell, in my case, L2 or actually I2 and I3, and divide that by how many? 2, because there's 2. That is certainly one way to take an average, is it not? Okay. Another way to take an average, someone tell me the function name I may choose to use. Average. So now I have the ability to either click in the cell manually and do a comma and click in the second cell. That certainly works, does it not? What's a quicker way to do that? Could I just grab this entire range right here? Okay, certainly. Let's say I wanted to manually type in the beginning and end cell. Okay, I can just type in I2, use the colon, type in I3. Okay, that certainly works as well. Because that's the only thing in the I column, one more thing I could do if I were so inclined is just grab the entire I column. Okay? They all get you to the same place. Yeah. I'm not aware of a technical term for selecting like an entire column. I think it's just selecting an entire column, grabbing an entire column, just that sort of thing. I'm not aware of a, you know, Microsoft sanctioned term or anything like that. I'm certainly not going to test you over that, and you know, I wouldn't worry about it. Any other questions? All right. So for labs, okay. Now, what did I say about lab grades? Is it the average of 6? I dropped the lowest one. Okay, so let's brainstorm what that means. Okay, what that means is I'm averaging 5 things, right? So I'm averaging 5 things. Am I just going to select the range manually? I mean, it's technically possible. But if I'm grading 60 people, am I going to do that? No. So I'll just go ahead and show you one way. Like I say, if you were just doing this for you, this would be a way that would work. Okay? Take the average of the top 5 grades. Okay, so just grab this range right here. That will technically work. Okay? Now you may think, well, how else could we do it? Well, pretty easily. Okay? So we have the sum function, where you're going to add up everything. And have we talked about the min and the max function? Okay. So let's talk about those briefly. Okay, the max function, as the name would imply, allows you to take the maximum value from whatever range you specify. Okay, so it's just going to return the maximum value. And the min function, min, who wants to take a guess at what that does? Okay, it returns the minimum value. Okay, so that's what we're doing there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the sum of all these labs, and we're going to subtract off the min of this same range. Okay, and then we're going to divide. We could divide by count minus 1. That will certainly work, because we're taking the count, which is 6, and we're subtracting off 1 for the lowest grade. That will work, right? Now, what else could we do? Could we just go ahead and make that subtract off 5? Sure. You got a question? What's another way? So that would work in this instance. I'll say an issue with that, though, is that you would lose which lab was which, especially if you had like a lot of different peoples and stuff like that. So in this case, that would work, but it wouldn't work in every case. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and see this. Now, we're going to have to use a lot of parentheses, right? Because before we do anything in terms of dividing, we want to ensure that we have the sum minus the min. Okay, we want to get our numerator first. You guys remember numerator and denominator? Okay, so we're going to use two parentheses here. We're going to take the sum, range, okay, minus min of the range. Okay. Now again, we're going to go ahead and close off this first parenthesis. Okay. So this parenthesis and this one are together. Okay. We're going to divide by, we're going to open up a parenthesis, type in count, and put in that same range. Minus 1, close parenthesis, close the big parenthesis. All right. So everyone with me on why this is the case? Because we don't have parentheses here, it's going to take the minimum range, so it's going to take the minimum value, and it's going to divide that, and then it's going to do sum. It's going to give you a completely wrong answer. Okay, you have to specify the order of operations. We do that, of course, with parentheses. Is anyone confused so far? All right, let's see an example. So like I say, we begin with two parentheses open. Type in the sum. Whoops. Put in the sum. Go ahead and grab the range you're interested in. Okay, go ahead and close that off. Now we just subtract the min. Okay, so grab that same range. That's going to be the range you're getting the min from. Okay, two parentheses right there. We still have this first parenthesis open. So this first parenthesis is still open, but we went ahead and closed this second parenthesis here. Okay, so it's an average. So we're just going to divide this by open parentheses, type in count. And again, we grab the same range here. Minus 1, because again, we're dropping the lowest as we subtract off the minimum. And close parenthesis, close parenthesis. Okay, to make sure your parentheses are closed, you can just click on them, and the color will change very slightly to kind of let you know that you selected it. It can be a little bit hard to see on the screen, but you should see it better on your computer that you're using. Okay, so does everyone understand this formula? Yeah. So it's going to drop it's going to calculate the average of the top 5, in this case, lab grades. Any other questions? Yeah. So you're talking about, like, will you have similar questions to this on exams and labs? Yes. Okay, not going to be the same as this, but they're going to be similar things. Any other questions? Yeah. so it should. What you could do, just for now, is you could just copy the range from the sum. So you just copy this, and then you could paste it into the range for the other two things. That will work. Alternatively, you could manually click on the first cell, hold down the shift key, click on the last cell. That's another way you could do it. A third way you could do it would just be to manually type in the range. So you could type in L2 colon L7, or I guess it's going to be a little bit different on yours because I think I moved everything over a little bit. But those are three different ways. I can take a look at it with you after class as well if you're still having issues. Okay. Like I said, I'll take a look at it with you after class. Any other questions? Okay, like I said, there's always multiple ways to do things. Okay? Let's see. Did you guys get an error message? Okay. Let's see why we got an error message. Okay. So it looks like I have an extra multiplication symbol in there. When I take that out, I don't get an error message anymore. Okay, so 82.6. Okay, so that's going to be the average, excluding the lowest lab grade. All right, does that make sense? Okay. So now we have the weights and we have the scores. Okay, so we want to apply a weighted score. So to do that, all we have to do is just multiply the weight times the score. So we're just going to start off with equals, and then we're going to put in the first weight multiplied by the first score. Okay, so we multiply those two together. It's going to give us a weighted score. Okay, you got a question? Did you begin with an equal sign? Okay, let me take a quick look at it with you. Okay, just a quick little look. So using the web version, you probably want to use the desktop version. Just glancing at it, I don't see, it looks like you missed a parentheses as well on the count. So those are the two things. Yeah, I highly recommend using the desktop version. It's going to be a lot better for a lot of formulas and stuff that we're going to be doing. Okay, and by the way, I sent an email out, I think Wednesday, with instructions for downloading Microsoft Office on your personal computer if you have not done so already. I recommend you do that as well. Like I say, see IT if you have any questions about it. All right, so I could manually type in, for these multiplying the weight times the score. I could manually type that in, right? You got a question? So certainly we can grab it, or another way that might even be a little bit quicker than grabbing it and dragging it would just be to click on the cell and then just double click on that square. Just double click it, and it goes ahead and fills it all in. Okay? There's always multiple ways to do things. So now to calculate the grade in the class, all I have to do is just add up these weighted scores. Okay, so I can use sum. I could use the plus sign and manually type in each of the cells. Lots of different ways. I'm just going to use a good friend, the sum. So when I add that range together, it's going to give me a 78.58. Okay? Now, what would that grade be? It'd be a C. Okay? Almost a B. But what would it have to be a B? That'd be a 79.500 or higher, right? Okay. Now, what's another way I could calculate the weighted scores and get to this number in a single cell? Okay, could I use sum product? I sure can. Okay, so we're just going to use sum product. Okay, and we just take our two arrays, multiply them together. So just a reminder, an array is just going to be basically a column. Okay, it's a lot of mathematical implementations. It's not a math class. So grab your first column, and then grab your cells from your second column. Close parentheses, hit enter, you get the same thing. Okay? Any questions so far? Let's go back over to the commands and terms to know. I just want to add a couple to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add min and max. Okay, so min, of course, is just going to give us the minimum value. So we're just going to start off with saying min and select whatever range we want. And of course, max is going to return the maximum value. Is everyone okay with min and max? Okay, I think we have time to also cover the date functions in Excel. Now, when I say the date functions, I'm not talking about a romantic date. Okay, this is analytics class. Okay, not a very romantic class, is it? All right, I should be more careful with my jokes. But basically, in Excel, you may have already seen that sometimes we type something that's related to a date, it will go ahead and format it as a date. And that can be very useful. So let's say we had a very large data set, and we were interested in getting one part of a date. Okay, there's a couple different functions we can use with that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add these functions as well. Year, month, and date. Okay. So, someone throw me your favorite date. March 3rd. Let's see here. Which year? So March is the third month, the third year, and we're just going to say 12. Okay, so we type that in. Excel goes ahead and turns that into a date. See how the data type up here is date? Everyone see that? Okay, we could change it if we were so inclined to like general, if we didn't want it to function as a date. Well, let's just assume we do want to function as a date. Okay, so have year, month, and day. What these functions do is they take out the respective thing. So from this, if we get the year, what is that going to give us? 2012. If we get the month, what is that going to give us? 3. If we get the day, what's that going to give us? Let's see some stuff. So how do I start off the function? Equals, I'm just going to use year, that's the function name. And it asks for a serial number, that's just going to be a date. So let's grab this date right here, and that gives you 2012. Okay, same thing, start off with an equal sign, type in the function name as month, grab the month, and now we do the same for day. Start it off, grab the date. Okay. It's a good thing Valentine's Day is coming up. I feel like Cupid setting up all these dates. Okay. So that's what we're doing there. That really is all there is to the dates in terms of the parts of Excel. Yeah. So yeah, you just start off any of these with a function name, and then you're just grabbing the date that you want to get the year from. Any other questions? Like I said, that's the extent I'm going to cover date. We're going to pick up with conditional logic, all the if, all that sort of good stuff. We're going to pick up with that on Monday. Apart from that, that's all I've got. I'll stick around for any questions, but I hope you all have a great weekend. Make sure that I get back the extra credit. So have a great day, everyone.